Settle in, let the day grow quieter around you, and imagine. A land without wheels, without a written alphabet, yet one that spanned deserts, climbed mountains, and crossed valleys so deep the air felt thinner simply to look at them. This was the Inca Empire, a civilization that stitched together a continent with threads of stone, roads that wound higher than clouds, through landscapes where llamas, not carts, carried goods, and where runners carried words not on paper, but in memory. These roads were not the soft dirt paths of a village. They were precise, deliberate, paved in cut stone, carved into cliff faces, or stretching like ribbons through barren plains. And along them moved the lifeblood of an empire. Messages, goods, and people, all bound to the rhythm of the state. Tonight, we'll walk slowly, steadily, through 4 parts of that world. We'll begin with those who knew the road most intimately. The Chhapaq messengers, breathing hard in the thin air, their legs carrying them not just across distance, but through the expectations of an empire. From there, we will move into the story of Atahualpa, the last Sapa Inca to rule a united land, a tale of civil war, uneasy peace, and the arrival of strangers from across the sea. We will pause in Machu Picchu, a place high in the mountains, so perfectly hidden that centuries passed before outsiders knew it was there. And finally, we will step into the sandals of a sun priest, whose duties stretched from the rising of the morning star to the precise counting of days, each moment bound to the will of gods and rulers alike. So, breathe in slowly, and imagine the crunch of stone beneath your feet. As we begin, why it sucked to be a Chhapaq messenger. You are standing on a narrow stretch of road. On one side, the mountain falls sharply away into a green valley. On the other, the slope rises steep and rocky, dotted with wiry shrubs clinging to cracks. The air is cool, almost cold, and carries a faint scent of smoke from a cooking fire far below. This is not a road built for comfort. The stones beneath your sandals are uneven, sometimes polished smooth by centuries of feet, sometimes jagged enough to catch your toes. The incline is constant, and if you were a Chhapaq, a runner in the service of the Inca, you would not be walking. You would be moving fast, faster than most people can sustain at this altitude. The Inca Road System stretched for more than 25,000 miles. That's enough to wrap around the earth, and then some. It tied together an empire larger than any other in the Americas, running through deserts, forests, plains, and mountains. The Chhapaq were its couriers, young men trained to run in relays from one post to the next, carrying messages, small goods, or even fresh fish from the coast to the mountains before it spoiled. You would begin before dawn. Your tunic, a simple woven garment, was pulled snug against the cold. Slung over your shoulder was a quipu, a bundle of knotted cords that stored numbers and information in a code that only trained specialists could fully interpret. Sometimes, instead of a quipu, you carried memorized words, instructions, lists, messages that had to be delivered exactly as they were spoken. The altitude was always with you. At low levels, the air was warm, heavy with the scent of dry grass and dust, but most of your work took place in the highlands, where every breath seemed to vanish before it filled your lungs. Your legs burned, your mouth dried quickly. Even the llama's gentle woolly shapes moving along the trail seemed to keep their pace more steadily than you could. Relay stations or tambos were placed every few miles. Inside, another Chhapaq waited, ready to take the message and run on. In this way, a message could cross hundreds of miles in just a few days. Faster than many armies in Europe at the time could dream of communicating, but that meant your sprint was relentless. The moment you heard the call of the runner approaching, you had to be ready. Heart racing before your feet even touched the ground, and there were dangers. Landslides could sweep away sections of road. Sudden storms could turn a mountain path slick and treacherous. In the tropical lowlands, heat pressed against your skin like a weight, and mosquitoes sang their high, ceaseless tune in your ears. You could not stop to rest. The empire depended on speed. A delay could mean the difference between a governor preparing for an inspection or being caught unprepared. Between an army arriving at a border in time or an enemy slipping past it, food was simple. Roasted maize, perhaps a handful of quinoa seeds, or dried meat known as chiki, enough to chew as you ran, not enough to slow you down. The Chhapaq's life was one of constant movement, but not of freedom. You ran where you were told. You carried what was given to you. You were the muscle and breath of the Inca communication network, but when you stopped, it was never for long. And as night fell on the road and the cold crept into your bones, you knew the dawn would come, and with it, another sprint along the stones, another horizon to chase. The year was 1532, and the highlands of the Andes carried a tense, brittle silence. The Inca Empire, an expanse of stone roads, golden temples, and mountain fortresses, had been weakened by something far more corrosive than foreign swords. A war between brothers. Atahualpa, the younger, had emerged victorious, his half-brother taken prisoner, but peace had not yet settled. It was only a thin crust over boiling waters. Into this fragile moment stepped strangers from across the sea. Francisco Pizarro and his band of less than 200 Spaniards. They came not as merchants, nor as guests, but with a strange mixture of confidence and hunger. They had crossed deserts, jungles, and months of ocean to reach this kingdom in the clouds. and they brought with them steel that flashed like no Inca weapon, beasts that breathed steam and snorted fire, and a faith as sharp as their blades. Atahualpa agreed to meet them in the town of Cajamarca. It was a trap, though he could not yet see it. His army numbered in the tens of thousands, but his soldiers were unarmed that day on expression of confidence, or perhaps of underestimation. He sat in a litter, carried high above the ground, draped in fine cloth, gold ornaments glittering against his skin, a living embodiment of divine power. The plaza where they met was quiet at first. Pizarro's men stood in shadow, the clink of armor muffled under the beating of their own hearts. Then, from the Spanish side, a friar approached Atahualpa, holding up a strange Objecta Bible land, speaking of a single God, of submission to the King of Spain. Atahualpa, curious but unimpressed, took the book in his hands, turned its pages, and then let it fall to the ground. That single motion, quiet, unhurried, was the signal. Muskets cracked, horses charged, steel cut through unarmored flesh, the air filled with screams and smoke. It was not a battle. It was a slaughter. Thousands of Incas fell where they stood, cut down before they could even raise a defense. Through the chaos, Pizarro himself reached the royal litter. Atahualpa was seized, pulled down from the shoulders of his bearers. The emperor, who had commanded a world, now stood surrounded by men whose names he had not known that morning. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the blood-slick stones of Cajamarca. In the weeks that followed, Atahualpa was held captive. He offered a ransom that would make him, in Spanish eyes, the most valuable prisoner in history. Enough gold to fill a room from floor to ceiling, and twice as much silver. The treasure came melted from sacred statues, stripped from temple walls, but it did not buy his life. In August of 1533, Atahualpa was led to the square, bound. He faced a choice: die by burning, or accept baptism and the noose. He chose the rope. That night, the Inca Empire lost its emperor, and the long unraveling of a civilization began. Machu Picchu's purpose. The morning mists of the Andes are a slow, patient thing. They rise from the valleys like a tide, curling over the stone terraces and narrow stairways, erasing the edges of the mountain until the world is nothing but clouds and the wet scent of grass. It is here, on this ridge between two peaks, that Machu Picchu sits. Even now, 500 years after its builders walked these paths, the site is almost too quiet for its size. A place of hundreds of rooms, yet no sound but wind and the distant rush of the Urubamba River far below. We do not know its name. Machu Picchu, Old Peak, is a modern title, given by explorers, centuries after the Inca Empire was gone. To the people who built it, it may have been something else entirely. Something unspoken, something sacred. The layout is deliberate. Stone walls fitted so precisely that not even a blade of grass could slip between them, run in terraces down the steep slopes. At the heart, open plazas give way to clusters of finely cut buildings. Some are small, humble. Others, like the Temple of the Sun, are made with a care and perfection that suggests more than mere shelter. Archaeologists have argued for decades over what this place was. A royal retreat for the Inca Emperor Pachacati, far from the noise and politics of Cusco. A ceremonial center, its position aligned with the solstice sun and the surrounding sacred mountains. Or perhaps a fortress, hidden away to guard something precious, though against whom we can only guess. There are hints. The stone quarries nearby, abandoned mid-cut, as if the workers knew they would not return. The spring-fed fountains that flow even in the dry season, their channels carved with precision. The way certain windows frame the sunrise at the exact moment of the June solstice, and then, there is its secrecy. The Spanish never found it. While they tore apart Cusco, melted down its gold, and built their churches on the ruins of temples, Machu Picchu slumbered under the clouds, untouched. Was that an accident, or was it built to be hidden? You can imagine it in its prime. Terraces green with maize and potatoes, llamas grazing along the slopes, priests in bright woven tunics carrying offerings to the temples, nobles walking the stone paths in silence, perhaps listening to the wind as it played in the mountains. The voice of the gods themselves, and yet, one day, they left. Not with fire or violence, but with a stillness. The fountains still ran. The walls still stood. But the voices, the footsteps, the life of the city, were gone. When the mists rise again each morning, they do so just as they did then, shrouding this mountaintop in the same mystery it has kept for centuries. A mystery that, perhaps, was never meant to be solved. The life of a sun priest? The first light of dawn touches the mountain peaks, turning their jagged silhouettes into gold. High in the sacred valley, the air is thin and cold, but here atop the temple platform, warmth is already returning. The sun priest stands still. He wears a long robe of woven cotton, dyed with cochineal red and edged with tiny golden discs that glint in the morning light. On his head, a tall headdress made of macaw feathers sways in the breeze. He has been awake since the stars still ruled the sky. For the Inca Empire, the sun is not merely a light in the sky. It is Inti, the giver of warmth, the father of the first Inca kings, the being who keeps the world in motion. And it is the sun priest's duty to speak to him. The priest's day begins with observation, not with a clock, but with the horizon. He knows where the sun rises each day of the year, where the shadows fall at midday, and which constellations guide the planting and harvest. The entire Inca calendar for festivals, for military campaigns, for when to shear the llamas, depends on his precise readings. Beneath his feet, in the temple's stone floor, narrow channels align perfectly with the solstice sun. They are not decoration, they are tools. Astronomical instruments carved into the heart of sacred architecture. The morning ritual begins. A small gold cup filled with chicha, fermented maize beer, is lifted toward the sky. Words are spoken in Quechua, soft and rhythmic, asking Inti to bless the empire's crops, armies, and rulers. The cup is poured onto the ground, a gift for Pachamama, the Earth Mother. Around him, assistants wait silently. Some hold bundles of coca leaves for divination. Others keep time with slow beats on a drum made from llama hide. The sound echoes against the stone, steady as a heartbeat. As the day passes, the sun priest's role shifts from astronomer to advisor. The Qhapaq Inca, ruler of the empire, consults him before major decisions. A war cannot be declared without checking the omens. A new royal marriage cannot proceed without the blessing of Inti. Even the timing of tribute collection from faraway provinces is guided by his reading of the heavens. It is power, but not his own. It flows through him, like sunlight through a window. By late afternoon, shadows lengthen across the plaza. The priest walks the temple corridors, checking offerings left by villagers. Small clay figurines, sheaves of maize, woven belts, each is placed with care, because in the Inca mind, the gods notice the details. Night approaches. The air grows cold again, and the stars appear, not points of light, but entire constellations shaped from the dark gaps in the Milky Way. The sun priest lifts his eyes. The cycle begins again. For the Inca Empire, faith and governance are inseparable. Without the priest's readings, armies would not march. Without the rituals, the crops might fail. Without his whispered prayers, the people might believe the sun could abandon them. And so, the sun priest stands at the center of an empire, not through armies or gold, but through the steady, quiet belief that the world is held together by the path of the sun across the sky. The Inca Empire was a world unlike any other, a land without the wheel, without an alphabet, yet with an intelligence that reshaped mountains and strung a web of roads across the spine of South America. We began with the Chasqui messengers, the human lifeline of the empire, breathing thin air, running stone steps at impossible altitudes, carrying messages that could decide the fate of armies. Life for them was short, exhausting, and entirely in service of the Qhapaq Inca. Then, we watched the fall of Atahualpa, a ruler who held the reins of half an empire torn by civil war, only to be caught in the polished steel trap of Spanish conquest. A king's ransom in gold, betrayed by the very hands that accepted it. We journeyed to Machu Picchu, where the stones seemed to whisper in the mist sacred sites. Royal retreat, or perhaps a place never meant to be found at all. Still, it clings to the mountainside as if defying both time and gravity. And finally, we stepped into the life of a sun priest, guardian of the empire's ritual heartbeat, a man who read the stars, kept the sacred calendar, and wove faith into the very framework of the state. To him, astronomy was not science, it was prophecy. All of these stories of endurance, betrayal, mystery, and devotion were threads in the vast tapestry of the Inca world, a world where faith and power walked hand in hand, where the empire's breath ran along the roads, carried by men whose legs were the wheel, and whose will was forged in stone. The Inca Empire did not survive the arrival of the Spanish, but its roads still trace the mountains, its terraces still green the slopes, and its stories still walk among the peaks, waiting for us to follow, step by step, into the clouds.